You're listening to the Vetted VA podcast, Your Journey Home. Nathan Nottingham is your host today, and he'll be chatting with Jason Sharon.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vetted VA podcast, Your Journey Home. I am in the middle of doing these great interviews with our Vetted VA professionals that make up some of the men and women who actually, you'll find in the Facebook group, you'll find them online, you'll find them talking, you'll find them on vetedva.com if you click on the states. And with me today is Jason Sharon. Jason has one of the few that got through both the testing and the mechanisms and joined Vetted VA from the earliest adoptions of it being a Facebook group. I believe even when this was brought up, he's like, "Hey, I'm in. What do you need from me?" And that's just the Jason Sharon we know. He's always like, "I'm in." And I'll just put this out there for him as well as a compliment. As one of the things that I love about him is that he's also really quick to go, "I don't think I agree. I love you, but let's fight it out a little bit first and figure out where we can balance this out." And that's one of the things I go to Jason for and love to watch. And he challenges regularly, but that's what makes us all sharp. So Jason, thanks for joining me on this. I'm excited to hear more about your story and share this with our larger audience.
Oh, I'm honored to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, all those things, man. Give me the deets.
Sure. So live in Charleston, South Carolina, licensed all Southeast, West Virginia down to Florida over to Alabama. I was the very first mod in Vetted VA. It was me and Chris. Don't judge me on our old posts before the rules were the rules. It was and, I do have a very distinct memory of Chris threatening my life if I deleted all or I declined all the pending members, because at one point we had like 4,000 members pending. And it was just me and Chris, and we were just trying to disprove all this kind of stuff. He's like, I will kill you if you find all 4,000 of these people. I'm like, got it, man. I can. It's very easy to not do something. I cannot do that for sure. But yeah, it was me and Chris at the beginning, trying to figure out which way's up, and obviously it's grown, and honored that Nate came in and set some really good professional expectations and started laying out the procedures and the training, all the stuff, because without that, it would just be turmoil in the group. So it really turned out well because of your input there, Nathan. As far as my background, not super cool. I was Navy for 20 years. I was enlisted for 9, commissioned for 11. I was a nuke. I was an electrician, nuke. Then I was an officer. I didn't do anything cool. I made hot water. I'm a nerd. Nuclear engineer. I glow in the dark. You won't find anybody nerdier that gets more into the guidelines than I do. Do a good bit of business. Not bragging about the amount of business. The one number that I do brag about is that last year I closed 40 loans that were declined somewhere else. That means that some other loan officer said yes. The person got under contract. Then that loan officer could not close the deal.
Yep. And
then that person found me, usually Google or through a referral, and said, "Hey, Jason, here's my deal. Can you do this?" And I'm like, "Yep, hold my beer." So there was 40 of those last year that I closed that somebody else said no to, and I was able to figure it out.
Yep.
I feel, and people say, "Well, how or why?" I'm like, just because I'm a nerd, I get into the guidelines more than anybody else. I am in the guidelines every single day. And as Nate said, I will challenge, and I'm not afraid to challenge an underwriter saying, "Hey, I don't think this is the right way to read this." So if there's a small modicum of opportunity there, we're going to figure out how to get your loan closed. And it's not that I'm special on that. I mean, all the Vetted VA professionals have that tenacity and that drive, and of course the network, right? I mean, we bounce stuff off each other all the time. Jason York and I are on the phone all the time. Turner and there's just a bunch of us. I was on the phone with Dallas, yesterday, and actually I was emailing Dallas and texting Dallas today. So it's a great community. We all feed off each other and all help each other. It's wonderful.
That's awesome. It is true though. You are one of the deepest guideline nerds I've ever met in my life. You never, for somebody who's been doing it for as long and kind of successfully as you have, you never just sit by and go, "Oh yeah, I know that," and just rattle it off. You're always like, "Let me go double check myself. Let me just reread it one more time." And I appreciate that about you. And I also appreciate your systemization. I think it's one of the things I learned from your time when you shared this with being a nuke uh, officer, and just the details are in that's where all the trouble is, but that's all where all the solutions are. And you're we've done some trainings that you were instrumental in helping out, even on the professional side of loan processor training, and some structures that you've put together. You're all about guidelines, policies, and procedures, and it's just a system for you. And I think it shows in how you're able to help people too. Just that when people come to work with you, they know what to expect because you tell them, here's what we're going to do, and here's my checklist, and they're like, oh, okay, all right, there we go. Well, that's what we're going to do. Refine and deliver. Well,
Like I've got one client
Jason.
right now that's been a little bit on the testy side, and I'm like, and they think they're driving the bus, and I let them think that a little bit, and then I finally, like, I sent an email like, here's what I'm going to do. Veto me if you don't like this, but this is how we're going to make this happen. So,
Yep. If you want the help, here's where we're going.
yeah.
um Talk to me a little bit about how you argue. Well, let me set the stage. Actually, argue is the wrong word. We had a VA summit recently at part of an event for Equity Prime Mortgage EPM tag, and you got up there and shared some things, and it was how to successfully submit a file to an underwriter. And we've never talked about this topic on this podcast before, but there's a lot of things that happen between a veteran or active duty service member who's like, I want to get a loan. They talk to the loan officer, and then that loan file getting to an actual lender's underwriter, either a direct retail or a wholesale one, like how you work. There's a process that goes into that. There's a position that you take where the success of that file has more to do with the communication, preparing and handing that file over than almost anything else. I might say maybe that's a little bit hyperbole, but walk me through where success lies in that process for you.
Yeah, I think that VA moderating taught me how to be more empathetic, because I was not an empathetic guy. I'm still not very, but um, the underwriters, after me getting kicked in the teeth, I don't know how many times by an underwriter of stuff that I thought I knew and didn't know or whatever, and then starting to see how to finesse things. If you put yourself in the underwriter's shoes, right? The underwriter is a salaried employee, and there is no winning, right? And so if the underwriter approves too many loans, then loans default and they lose. If they don't approve enough loans, then the company doesn't make enough money because they decline loans and they lose. So the underwriters are in a no-win situation. I don't know why they do their job. I'm glad they do. I'm happy to have them as friends. But I try to, whenever I'm looking at a file, I'm looking at it from, how am I going to get this underwriter to like this file? And the words I use a lot, and I even used them last night with two of my loan officers on a Zoom call, is like, you want to wrap that loan up in the prettiest red bow and give it to the underwriter. So when they open it, they're like, this is a great loan. I want to approve this. Whereas if you give them a bunch of crap, like one of my LOs did, you get 15 extra conditions.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't need if you just took the time. And a lot of times I put Dear Underwriter Read Me First.pdf in the file, and I'll explain, hey, this is what's going on with the person, because the underwriters are people, right? They want to approve loans. They don't want to approve loans that shouldn't approve. But if you just give the loan application and the documents, the pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements, that loan application is 5 to 7 pages long, depending on how detailed it is, and they've got to go through every box and understand it. Whereas if you present, hey, Sergeant Miller is PCS and his wife is going to show up 9 months early with her kids because they've got a family member there that they want to help with childcare, and so that the occupancy is going to be a little odd, but the spouse going to be the occupancy. And he had an NSF last month. Him and the wife didn't talk about a particular or they double paid the rent or something, right? Everybody's got a story, right? And everybody should have a story. And we want to present that story to the underwriter, so that way the underwriter is looking at the veteran at the loan as a human being, not just a number. And if you do that initial setup, and you have anything that could be weird or odd in the loan, you explained up front.
Yep.
It's going to be a much more simple process for the veteran. And what I found is that veterans are very compliant to get you whatever you need in the first 2 weeks.
Right.
On day
Yes.
15, they turn into the devil. They don't want nothing to do with you, with your
It's too
company,
long.
with underwriting, with nothing. You should ask me for this at the beginning. So you got to get everything in the beginning. And some loan officers are afraid to ask too much in the beginning, and then they
Hmm.
just get kicked in the teeth on the third week and the fourth week of the loan. Whereas if you
Yeah.
get everything up front and explain everything up front and give everything to the underwriter up front with a pretty red bow, then it's a much easier, simpler process.
Yep. Yeah, because I mean, inadvertently, no matter how hard you try, there's a possibility you're going to miss just something. Even and stuff that sometimes, like, I've had tons of files where even though I was digging and asking the right questions, not everything was told to me until something else led to something else. And like, oh, why didn't you tell me that today? So you're never going to get 100%, but as much as you can with what you know, have 100% completion, hand that over to the underwriter. It does go a lot faster. And then also you're able to disclose what needs to be disclosed and not over disclose, which could cause more problems.
Sure, absolutely. Like I've got a loan right now that I'm having to move from one investor to another for a VA member. She might be listening to this. I don't know. Super, super nice gal, single mom, um, manual underwrite, need reserves, discussed. Hey, I need to make sure that you've got 2 times the mortgage payment in
Mm,
your checking savings somewhere. Oh yes,
yep.
I've got $17,000. We disclose the loan. She won't give me a bank statement. Like, please send them to me. Please send me. Send her the link to upload them, all this stuff. Oh, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Finally, she signs disclosure. I'm like, I can't put your loan in underwriting without bank statements. I've got to show that you got reserves. The bank statement she gives me starts at a negative number and ends at a negative number.
Okay.
I'm like, all right.
That's not a positive.
No, and this is a tough file as it is. Credit scores
Yeah.
under 600,
Yeah.
DTI is high. We do have some compensating factors. So we are going to close this loan. We're not closing it with the original investor because I didn't put it in a pretty red bow because I didn't have that information in the
Gotcha.
beginning, right? So that we can only do as good as we can with what the client gives us. And when the client tells us, "Hey, we've got all this money," but then the bank
Yep.
statement starts off negative and ends negative, and got thousands of dollars in NSFs for the year, I've got to figure out a different
Adjust.
red bow to put on this.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm curious in the loans you do, the states you're in, the team you have, what's one or two of the most common things you find yourself repeating to clients that find you and want to work with you, or training them on because they came in assuming one thing and really the reality is something else? Is there a commonality there?
The most common thing I have to explain is that yes, you can have another VA loan
Mm-hmm.
all the time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first resources we had in VA, and it's still there, is in the file section of my book that I wrote, VA loans declassified. I sell that on Amazon.
Yeah.
I give it to all the VA members for free, and
Mm-hmm.
it's in the file section. I got tired of saying the same thing over and over again. And actually, a buddy of mine, a vet, he's not a vet of VA because he's a tax preparer. He and I served together. He's retired Master Chief E9. He asked me to do a chapter in his book, and he's written probably 20 tax books. The guy's super successful tax author. Kirk said, "Hey, can you write a chapter on mortgages?" So I wrote a chapter on mortgage, gave it to him. He's like, "Jason, you need to write your own book." I'm like,
Hmm.
no, I can't do it. He goes, "I bet you can." He goes, "I bet you've already written it." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Check your set folder.
Yeah.
What question have you answered over and over and over in your set folder?" I'm like, "That's a chapter. Oh, that's a chapter. Oh, that's."
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I took whatever most commonly sent emails, made each one of those a chapter, published it, throw it on Amazon. I make $100 a month on it. Man, I make nothing.
Yeah.
Give it away. I look at it as a very expensive business card. I give away I give away hard copies, give away PDFs.
Yep.
But we all have that same thing. But I would say the most common is the occupancy eligibility thing, and then you get into income, um, and then that gray area that everybody hates in VA loans of you can't use active duty income in the last 12 months if you're really getting out. That's probably the top three.
Yes. Let's talk about that one. Let's talk about after active plan. How do you counsel people that are in that boat? They're thinking about getting out, how they get out. They're waiting till they're about like 2 to 3 months away from final date or terminal, and they're like, "Hey, now I'll go buy a house." And you're like, "Oh, okay." Like, how do you counsel them? How do we prepare them?
Yeah, I say that they're fitting in that gray. I call it a gray area or a tweener spot where the VA just doesn't believe that you're gonna have stable income because you're about to get out. And I say it to them. I say it with empathy. I'm like, yes, if they really believe that, then why are they letting you get out? And why is the TAPS, so the Transition Assistance Program, TAPS program, that all active duty vets, active duty service members must do not pass go, do not collect $200, must go through TAPS. It's a week-long class,
Mhm.
whenever you're transitioning out. Why do they not emphasize stuff more in TAPS if the VA on the home side, the housing side of the house, doesn't have confidence in the transition side of the house? But I throw my hands up. I'm like, the government, we're here to help. It's just one of those gray areas that's very unfortunate. And then I get into job offer letters, the requirements for job offer letters, that kind of stuff in that conversation.
Requirements of job offer letters. I'm working on one right now myself that E9 retiring soon has an offer letter starting within the 60 days from the date of close on the house, and looks like we're gonna be fine. Where do you kind of set your lines, and what do you look for? Because I mean, let's talk to somebody who's thinking terminal. They're about to leave. They're trying to finish up their final house, and they're like, "Well, I'm gonna go get it." Maybe they did skill bridge, maybe they don't. Maybe they just got a buddy or a friend. Somebody who's like, "Hey, we'll hire you as soon as you're done." What do they need to help qualify to get a house on there at that leaving point to prove income?
So there's two halves of that question. I think the first
Hmm.
is, how do you tie the new job to the military, right?
There you go.
And
Yep.
and I've had loans come to me from some of the big banks that were declined that I saved, where someone, let's say they were a tank mechanic,
Hmm. Hmm.
and now they're going into cybersecurity, or no, now they're going to security. They're going to some type of security. They're going to something that, right? There's no tank jobs in America.
Right. Right.
That just doesn't exist, right?
Well,
And we
hold on.
don't.
I think there's at least 2 to 3 in Texas if on private ranches where you drive a tank. Probably.
Sure, but and generally that's not an industry that's has a high demand for post military service, right?
Yeah.
So you have to go through and look at and say, hey, will your manager say you're being hired due to your known discipline and your known leadership, your known management ability of being in
Mm,
the military for 4, 6, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, right? So that sergeant major that you're helping there, or master chief, whatever whatever service he was in, has a tremendous amount of leadership and managerial skills. He might not be a great people person, but he definitely has a tremendous amount of management and leadership and
mhm.
supervisory skills. So you then craft a letter trying to connect his tank job to whatever job he's going to do in corporate America. Maybe he's getting hired
Yeah.
to oversee a development thing in a factory, or whatever. So he's being hired because of his skill set in the military, although it doesn't directly correlate. So that's a very common thing that I do, that I wish more loan officers thought to do, because I'm sure there's a lot of vets across America that get turned down because there's not a direct correlation from where they're going to where they where they were to where they're going to.
It's
But
true.
it's very easy to convince an underwriter that you're being hired because of discipline, your military discipline, your leadership, your management
Yeah.
from that. Even if you're an E4, you were put in charge of E1s through E3s.
Hmm.
You can use that supervisory thing. Like I had that where someone was being hired. I forgot what he did in the military. Doesn't matter. He definitely was not into lawn care, but he got hired by a landscaping contractor, and they had the contract for all the Walgreens in the area. So they
Hmm.
they were doing a ton of landscaping for. There's probably like 30 Walgreens here in this area, South Carolina, and he was hired to make sure that the people that cut grass and trim bushes were there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they were where they needed to be at 11 o'clock in the morning, So his management of having people bodies where they need to be was why he got hired by this contractor that had a huge Walgreens contract.
Gotcha.
So that's the first half of the question is connecting that previous job to new job. The second part, and you kind of said it one word. You said, "What's the one thing?" And I say, "There's one word on job offer letters: contingencies." Right? You got to understand contingencies, and contingencies are something that must be satisfied prior to a condition being true, and that condition being true is being hired. And the contingencies you generally see on job offer letters are drug test, which we're all going to pass that generally. Background check, that's going to be generally going to be pretty easy. That's going to be through a local law enforcement or state law enforcement background check. Make sure you're not a convicted felon for whatever job. Professional licensing is another one that I see all the time. Nurses. Is there reciprocity for a nurse license or a teacher license from one state, from North Carolina to South Carolina, or from Georgia to Alabama, whatever. And then the fourth contingency that I see pretty routinely, and this is the longest pole in the tent generally, and that's a security clearance. If you had a security clearance in DOD, and now you're going to work at a contractor, maybe it's a prime contractor, or maybe you're going to work for the Department of Energy, or you're going to work for Department of State, or something like that. Or like I had a guy that transitioned out, and he got hired. He was a security forces an SF guy, and then he was getting hired by FBI, going to work in Huntsville for train HRT stuff. And he had to get a security clearance transferred, and it took forever. His closing was delayed because could not clear that security clearance contingency.
Got it.
If your new job is going to require security clearance, you could have a delay on those contingencies.
So that's a big takeaway. I just want to kind of reference that again. You're leaving, you've got a job offer, but there is going to be a line on contingencies, contingent upon licensing, background checks, drug tests. I mean, all sorts of things, right? If your offer letter has a contingency, understand what it's going to take to get that contingency cleared, and know that is going to be a condition on getting that approval.
Yeah, the documentation is easy. It's either an updated offer letter, removing that, or it's just a letter signed by HR say, "Hey, these contingencies have been cleared." The documentation is super easy. Sometimes meeting that hurdle could be difficult, depending on the particular contingency.
And the type of company you're going to go work for, how big they are, who's talking to whom, all those things. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk through one of your other ones, and so these turn downs. Okay, so 40 last year, you picked up turn down loans. They turned down by other banks. You get into them. They're coming to you like, "Hey, you're my last hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi," right? They come in and where do you start with somebody who's had that experience, and how do you kind of reinstill, hold on, let's have a dialogue, please? What do you ask? Where do you begin with something like that?
So I say, let me grab a pen and paper and then talk to me, and just listen and start taking notes, because they have been put through the ringer. They're stressed. They don't want to hear anything I have to say, right? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the only way you're going to be able to convince them how much you care is to listen and then ask clarifying questions, right? You listen, you ask a question to clarify, and then you give an opinion or not, or you just take notes. Listen, ask a question to clarify, take notes, and you let them talk, because they are frustrated, right? I mean, this is the biggest thing in their life, right? They're moving, buying a house is a full-time job, getting a mortgage is a full-time job. And now you got told you're not doing a good job of doing your job. You're getting declined as a mortgage. I mean, it's rough for people. And a lot of times they're getting told this in the 11th hour. I've got one deal right now down in Florida that's a new construction. VVA called me up, said, "Hey," and she is a strong-willed woman. Holy smoke, she doesn't let me talk. I'm like, all right. So retired E8 or retired E7. Anyway, she and unfortunately she thinks she is the expert at VA loans because she uses AI a lot. But I just sit there and listen, and we're going to close the deal. And it's not an easy thing to overcome. It's her taxes. Her taxes were just, she did her own taxes, and she should not have done her own taxes.
Got it.
Her tax situation is complex enough to where it's beyond QuickBooks. It may even be beyond H&R Block, but she went and had a consult with H&R Block, and they told her what to do, and she did not do it. She did what she said she did, exactly what they told her to do. Um, but I'm looking, I'm like, I don't know. We're going to get through it, but it's the people need to be, you have to listen to them. And then
Yeah.
once they get it that you care,
Yep.
they will listen to you on how you're going to solve their problem.
I think it's one thing I learned from you early on too is there's you got to listen for the details in the story, and it's not because if we just jump to the conclusion of, oh, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that, and I find myself tracking that and getting caught in that sometimes, but you're listening for the details, you're asking more questions than you are talking back about it, because that the trick, the a lot of times loan officers that have had to turn somebody down didn't stop to ask and like look under every rock. I almost lost one because the gentleman's got a great plan. He's buying another home, but he was moving from his primary to another house. He's going to buy another VA loan, which is totally fine. He's going to turn one into a rental. Well, he was downsizing, and he had mentioned a girlfriend at one point, and I didn't follow that line and ask all the right questions. And in the middle of the transaction, he's getting married. And we're a community property state. So all of a sudden I now have a marriage and I have to pull more credit. If I would have heard that, I would have said, hold up. Like if I would have asked the right question, oh, how long have you all been together? What are you doing next? What's the plan? To hear the whole story, I would have found that out. But thankfully we didn't lose it. We were able to close on time and get it all done. But you're right, asking all the questions without just jumping to the conclusion of, oh, it's a simple one. There's nothing simple in what we do.
No, not
It's just, no.
No, even though, in my, one of the books I wrote was, I've got in there that even the little old lady, I think it's the book I wrote for real estate agents, even the little old lady with the 800 credit score, 80 years old, all fixed income, 50% down, 800 credit score. There's gonna be something you got to figure out before the underwriter does in that scenario.
Yeah.
And then going back to your thing about listening, in my LOA, my loan officer assistant book that I wrote, one of the things that I emphasize the most in there is you have to underwrite every conversation in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time you're having, even the very first conversation I have with somebody, which is generally a fact finding, feeling each other out thing. Every single thing they say, I'm bouncing against guidelines in my brain of, hey, could this be an issue? For instance, one of the most common things, whenever we're starting talking about down payment or closing, cash at close, if it's VA, you obviously don't have down payment, or you could if you want, but I'll say, let's say it's an FHA loan, and today it was a $220,000 townhouse that she wanted to buy. And I was like, okay, that's going to be about a $7,700 down payment. Where's it going to come from? And she was like, oh, I can get that. Ding, ding, ding. Bells go off in the back of my head. I can get that is not an okay answer.
Yeah.
So that you have to underwrite that statement in your head and say, okay, well, is that money in your gun safe? Is that under the mattress? Is that coming from mom? And then you can unpack, hey, remember the mortgage meltdown. We got to trace we got to make sure there's no illegal kickbacks going in, on that kind of stuff, to get them to open up where that money's going to come from, right? Because we're trying to get, like I say in my company manual that we have a special trust, right? There's a reason why we have the word officer in our name, right? There's a special trust the public gives to us, right? Yeah. We know everything. We know where this person, once we get the credit, the income, the bank statements, the W-2s, all that stuff, I know where you buy your underwear. I know everything about you, right? And they don't even realize how much we know about them, right? We know where they go for lunch every day. We know how much they spend at the vending machine, on the work floor. We know if they we know if they have an OnlyFans account. We know if they're gambling on online gambling. We know everything about somebody, and it's scary for someone to give that to us if they realize how much they're giving to us.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we're giving them enough show that we care, to where they
Yeah.
would then open up and say, okay, well, where the money's really going to come from is I'm going to sell an 4-wheeler. I'm going to sell a boat, or my mom's got some money, or I let my uncle borrow money 4 years ago and he's finally going to pay me back, or whatever. Every loan's different.
Those, if you're listening through this one and you're thinking, gosh, I don't know that I want to be that open or transparent. Let me just stop you right there. You kind of have to be. That's one of our jobs where we have to go. But the other part of that is to um, plan ahead accordingly, right? If you've got a bank account that your closing costs are going to come out of, make it one bank account. Make sure all the balances are in there for the last 60 to 90 days. So when you pull your 2 months of bank statements, I don't see large transfers, because I have to ask questions about transfers. Right, Jason? I
Yeah.
mean,
So
am I leading us astray, or,
no,
or would you agree
you're
with that?
100% right. No, here's an example. I had a client. This is a true story. Brandon. Brandon and I are still friends. This was 7, 8, 9 years ago. Brandon and I are still friends. I'm still friends with his wife Savannah as well. Um, it was a manual underwrite, and it was alternate lines of credit. Brandon had no credit.
Mm.
His credit
Mhm.
report was blank. He was a ghost.
Mhm.
He had great income. He had good assets. His debt to income ratio was low, obviously because he had no debt. But we had to prove alternate lines of credit for Brandon. Rent, and then we had to get 3 lines of credit. Car insurance, cell phone, whatever. Well, we could not find the third one.
Hmm.
Brandon's like, oh, I don't have anything else. I don't have anything else. I don't have anything else. And Brandon and Savannah are not the real names, just so you know. So, because this is going to be kind of funny. So I'm like, Brandon, just send me your last 12 bank statements.
Hmm.
And he was ready to give up. He's like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, Brandon, do you really want to tell your wife that you're not going to be able to get this house? No, I'm not going to do that. I said, well, send me your 12 months bank statements. So I've got a big conference table in my conference room. So I printed out all 12 bank statements and I had the whole table covered with bank statements. And I'm looking for something that's repeating every month. And the underwriter does that to see if there's undisclosed debt, right?
Yep.
So I'm acting like I'm the underwriter. I'm trying to find something to help Brandon out. So I'm looking, I see this one particular thing. It's like $5.95 a month, repeating every single month. I'm like, aha, I got it. So I called Brandon. I said, good news, Brandon. I found it. I need to know what this is. And I tell him, he's like, and it's like 5 letters. They make no sense, like F2753. It's something like that, right? No, it made no sense, meant nothing to anybody. Brandon's like, no, we can't use that. I'm like, what do you mean you can't use that? He's like, no, I can't use that. I'm like, Brandon, this is the only thing. I went through everything. That's the only thing that's repeating for 12 months. It's $5.95. We could use it. I'm going to get you the house. He's like, no. I'm like, do you want me to call Savannah and tell them that I can't do the house? Do this? He's like, yes, call Savannah. We can't use that. I'm like, all right. So I called and she's like, so an hour later, he calls me back, says, it's a porn subscription, Jason. So we used a porn subscription as alternate lines of credit. So there's a tremendous amount of trust that you put into a loan officer, but it could get you your house. And why do you want a house? Because rent is 100% and the house appreciates. Yep. There's a tremendous amount of value in homeownership.
Yep. Man. That's a story. Yeah, I haven't ever done that one.
It'll come. You'll get that. You'll get one of those.
Right. That's a deep.
But that's why I close loans that others don't, because I'm going to go through and figure it out.
Yeah. When you're dealing with real estate agents who just don't want to accept the VA home loan, what do you like to tell them? How do you like to change their mind on that?
So the first thing I say is, I love conversations like this. Thank you so much for your time to listen to me a tad, please. And I started giving facts, from the white paper that the VVA published, that VA loans are 4% more likely to close. I said, then I started giving of reasons, hey, if it's condo, it's already approved. We don't have to go through condo approval. If it's conventional and it's got PMI, I bet you didn't know that conventional has an underwriter, and then the PMI company is going to have an underwriter. So you've got double the underwrites on a conventional loan than you do on a VA loan. Said, I bet you didn't know that conventional you don't have a single formal process to appeal a low appraisal. However, VA has 2 formal processes to appeal appraisal. There's so many reasons why you should. I said I would rather take a VA loan if I was a seller than any other loan type. And if you don't give your seller this information, you're not doing your sellers a proper service. And of course, do you still have some buyer agent, listing agents that aren't gonna be that way? Yeah. Heck, in the group the other day, someone was complaining. One of the members were complaining about that, and my comment, which is kind of tongue in cheek, was say, "Hey, can you please put that in writing so I could repost this on social media so all the vendors know not to use you as a real estate company."
Right.
So,
I love that. Well, man, I appreciate the insights. You definitely know your stuff, and you hold us all to a higher standard for that and what you do. And I appreciate your giving attitude. You probably don't get called out enough for how much you give, but I appreciate how much it is you regularly give and just offer up wisdom, time, experience, whatever it is we need. Whenever anybody ever asks, you're like, "Yep, I'm there. I got you." And it's been fun to watch your proud moments with your daughter the last
sure.
Few months. What did she accomplish?
Yeah, so she joined the Navy. She's off the coast of actually she's in Australia right now. She got a port call in Australia. I talked to her a couple hours ago. She's as happy as an E1 can be on a ship. So not very happy, but she's obviously happy as she can be. Just figuring out which way is up, which way is port, what side starboard, and doing Navy stuff.
Learning the ropes, man. That's awesome. Thanks for all you do, Jason. Ladies and gentlemen, listening to his stories, listening to who Jason Sharon is. If you want to find out more about him, you can find him on the VVA map on South Carolina and a couple other states. But more, you just find him online. The guy has a wealth of information and knowledge. He shares openly with anybody who asks, and he tells some pretty good stories too. So you can find him there. All his contact information is on VVA.com, but also homeloansinc.com.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
homeloansinc.com is his website. You can grab him and his business team there. They're fantastic to talk to and work with. So, Jason, thanks a lot for joining me on this one and sharing your wisdom.
Sure. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the VVA podcast, Your Journey Home. We hope this information has been helpful, enjoyable, engaging, supportive. But here's the biggest call to action for you. If you are a veteran, a service member, a family member of the same, and you have earned or have access to the VA home loan eligibility and have questions, please feel free to join us at VVA on Facebook. Go to facebook.com, search for the VVA group, and you'll find it. Answer some of the questions to enter, and once you do that, you're good to go. If you're a professional, a real estate agent, lender, insurance agent, you know the drill. Well, as a professional, we'd love to have you join the professionals only group. We do all the same information, but at a little bit different scope because, well, of how you're coming into that information to support yourself and the other consumers that you work with. So please join VVA on Facebook or VVA for Professionals on Facebook. Follow us on TikTok, wherever you can find it. And as always, all the white papers, the resources, the documents, and the training, the free training courses are available at VVA.com. You'll find them all there. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. My email is nathan@vettedva.com. I'm the COO, and I'm ready to help. Glad you tuned in for this episode, and looking forward to bringing you the next one. Take care.